Hi, this is Brian Hudson, and I'm going to record a short test video here, all about the child maintenance service, fabrication of arrears, and what that means in the real world if you are left to then have to deal with that. What you can see in front of you here is a spreadsheet model that I've created, and I've based this on the fabrication of arrears that they have loaded onto me. I won't go into detail about how they've done that. That's probably for another day. But what this does do is give me the opportunity to model it financially. Now, my circumstances are that I was pushed into the loss of my business and then a period of homelessness and subsequent bankruptcy. Pretty much as soon as that bankruptcy took place, we got hit by the pandemic. So employment opportunities are thin on the ground. And what you can see up here at the top of the screen is the total amount of fabricated debt that I've been loaded with of £15,000. And then, of course, the Child Maintenance Service will charge a levy on top of that of £3,000, 20%. And after a long phone call that got fairly heated with the Child Maintenance Service yesterday, when they informed me that they would be enforcing that as soon as I gain employment. At the moment I'm on universal credit, and I have been for about a year now. I wanted to know what that would look like. They had no intention of listening to reason. I've been through tribunal. The tribunal was, it was a pantomime, really. As a very quick summary, it appears that the Child Maintenance Service have created for themselves and had approved a bunch of regulations that allow them to defraud parents. That's the long and short of it. And for another video, perhaps I can go into some more detail about that. But this is the reality that I am now faced with, and so many are now faced with. And what that means is I felt that I needed to calculate what that would look like in the real world. To what degree would I have to earn money in order to be able to support myself, my son, who I have 3 days a week. I have an older daughter who's 20 at university, if I want to be able to support her in any way. I have elderly parents who, are, far from well off and in the twilight of their lives, not experiencing particularly great health right now. So if I want to be able to support them in any way, what would that require? What sort of salary would I need to be able to command in order just to, meet my most basic needs? So in this table, what you can see here is on the first column, we have the gross salary that I might find a job to pay. I'm capable of earning, reasonable salaries with my background and my skill set. It's really a case of, do I really want to at the moment, given that I feel that I'm being put into a position of slavery. But we'll go on to that a bit later. So in that first column, what we see is, at the lower end of the scale, we see that there isn't really much of a requirement to pay child maintenance. But there is, of course, this massive debt. Okay, so I've split across the top here a schedule where I would either pay £1,000 a month, £900 a month, and going down in increments of £100 over to the final one of £100 a month. Now, of course, the lower the sum, the longer it would take to pay that off. And therefore, the longer I am enslaved to the Child Maintenance Service and to HMRC and to the requirement to have a high-paying job. Now, the average salary in the UK is, I've put it down here, the average full-time salary is £35,500 a year. Okay, so what we can see also here is I've just put down what my most basic monthly outgoings are to be able to keep a roof over my head I've had all of my assets essentially destroyed through a very sinister divorce. So I have no assets left. I have no business left. And my rent for a relatively modest place, or a very modest place actually, on the outskirts of London, is 1,700. And my most basic bills would mean, before I pay anything into a pension, have any entertainment, ever go on a holiday, or provide any support to my daughter or my parents, my minimum monthly outgoings are going to be nearly £2,700. Okay, so what this table then tells me is that even if I'm only paying £100 a month towards this fabricated debt, I have to be on a salary of £50,000 a year. Okay, I think considering that is what, 50% above, give or take. That's 50% above the average salary. That seems pretty unreasonable. That at doing a full-time job, and that's all I can do, I will have, at the end of each month, spare cash of £16.28. I won't be able to provide any entertainment for my son. I won't be able to do any out-of-school activities with him. I won't be able to take him on holiday. It'll be a pretty meagre life on a £50,000 a year job, where no doubt they'll want their pound of flesh. For me to be able to pay off at £1,000 a month, because the reason I might want to do that is, if I pay off at £100 a month, to pay that debt off will take 15 years. So I'll be enslaved to this for 15 years because they've put a fabricated debt of £18,000 on my head. And they will take it. They will reach into any bank account that I have my name on, and they will take that money. There won't be a concern for what I have left to pay my other outgoings or to look after my son. If I don't have any money there, they will take the money from straight from my earnings. If I have a salary, they will go to my employer and they will force my employer to pay that. That money will be taxed first. So the Treasury does very nicely, thank you, out of that. Me being forced to earn a higher amount, which they collect taxes on. Essentially, if you look down here, I've done a little table for it. If I were to pay that debt at £1,000 a month on a £50,000 salary, over an 18-month period, the HMRC, the UK Treasury, would benefit almost £15,000 on top of this £18,000 that has been fabricated. So it's not always the amounts that are put in front of you that are the complete amount. We are put in a position where we must work and we must take on demanding jobs. If we take any time out in our 4-week holidays that we might get every year, we will have no money with which to actually have a holiday. There will be no possibility at that level that I can build a pension pot. My entire pension was wiped out through my very sinister divorce. All of my assets, as I said earlier, were wiped out. So there's no provision for me. I'm 50 now. There's no provision for me when I reach retirement age. So I really, given that at £100 a month, it's going to take me 15 years, I'll reach 65. If I get a £50,000 a year job and pay that off slowly, I'll reach 65 with no pension contributions having been made and being completely reliant on the state. to support me, or I'll have to carry on working, so, which, perhaps I'll do that, but it seems to me that I'm being forced, and, there's a question mark for me legally as to whether that means this scenario amounts to slavery, modern slavery. I think it does, and I'm going to show you that legislation in a moment. So the other thing to point out here is actually to be able to get to a position where, I can pay that debt off at £1,000 a month over a year and a half. Realistically, for me to be able to start to think about having, an occasional holiday, paying some money into a pension, living some sort of life where I can afford to meet a friend for a pint occasionally, perhaps embark on a relationship and have go out for an occasional meal. I really need to be earning £80,000 a year or more, for to really just get onto the first rung of living any sort of life. And, those jobs are quite difficult to come by. If I were a member of Parliament, that's the salary that I would be getting. So that's the kind of level of responsibility that you need to take on. Very senior management, board level director, in order to command that kind of income, and all on the basis that I've had a debt fabricated, and they will enforce it. And if I don't pay it, if I try to dodge it, the sanctions that they have at their disposal are that they suspend my driving license, so I wouldn't be able to get to work anyway. They suspend my passport, so I couldn't travel. And ultimately that they prosecute me. So they give me a criminal record, which of course would make it all the more difficult to get or keep a job that is well paying. And they might actually even give me a prison sentence. So, and my trial will be based on the fact I've been unable to pay a debt that they fabricated. And that will be my offence, that I've been unable to pay a debt that they fabricated, and keep up with payments that amount to slavery, where they are the ones that are breaking the law, albeit that they have created for themselves regulations that allow them to do that. So it's a government legitimised fraud upon parents. And of course, working at this level, where you're commanding this kind of salary, you have to invest an awful lot of time. So you're not particularly, as effectively a single parent 3 days a week, you're not particularly able to invest your time into your children. Now, another thing to take on board is that I only have one child who falls under child maintenance oversight. There are so many parents out there that will have 2, 3, maybe more. And I also have my son 3 days out of every 7. There was a second round of litigation with a bunch of false allegations to take that down to 3 out of 7 from equal shared care, which was running perfectly well for a number of months beforehand. And my son was thriving during that period of time. And all in order to be able to extort money using the child maintenance service as the tool to do that. So, I hope that this kind of explanation of the reality that faces anybody who falls under the control, if you like, of the child maintenance service, what their financial reality is. If they don't have assets and the child maintenance service have conjured up some arrears through their very weird and wonderful methods of calculating that don't work in the real world, aren't based on fact, but are based on wild assumptions, this is what you end up with. So it's pretty easy to see why any parent who has been has one child or maybe more, if it's more the monthly cost will be higher to them, so their requirement to earn even more than I'm demonstrating here could be significant. If they, not only if they have more than one child, if they don't have those children as much as I have my son, then their requirement to pay maintenance will go up. The cost of the levy that the Child Maintenance Service likely enforces upon them will also raise their requirement to work harder and harder and harder in order to give away everything that they earn. So this, in effect, is it's a more than a 100% taxation system that these parents who are put in this position that I've been put in are faced with. And, what I've done here that you can see in the red text is, this is really showing the deficit of income as I go through the layers of salary that I might take a job on to be able to generate. And, you can see here that actually, even on a salary of £60,000, if I'm paying £1,000 a month off, in order to get rid of this debt sooner, not later, I've got a year and a half where even at £60,000, I'm £500 a month short. So I've got to be on £70,000 a year in order to, still have, actually I'm still in deficit there. That should be in red. So it's complete madness. I have to be earning £80,000 a year in order to pay off a fabricated debt, within a year and a half. So I've got a year and a half of utter misery while I'm working my balls off for other people who are all benefiting by doing absolutely sod all other than persecute me and demand money with menaces, which is exactly what this amounts to. So it's really little wonder, isn't it, I think, that if you look at my study that I've done on parental suicide from the population of parents who are responsible for paying to the other parent, that we are seeing 1,060 excess deaths every year in that relatively small population of parents who fall into financial difficulty. It's also not difficult to see why they're falling into financial difficulty when, I need to earn nearly 3 times the UK average salary just to keep afloat. Those sorts of jobs come with a lot of stress. They come with a lot of commitment. They need focus. They come with a lot of responsibility. And, I'm not sure there are too many people that can handle that for very long. I'm certainly not willing to handle it because I'm not willing to reward the person that abused me and my son. I'm not willing to reward the government for this policy. I'm not willing to finance the terrorism that this organisation engages in on the government's behalf. I'm certain that with all this additional taxation that other fathers in my position and other, some mothers too, are forced into generating for the government, none of it's finding its way back to help any of us when in our hour of need, when we are being abused by former partners or abused by the state. There's no recognition. In fact, what we see is that receiving parents pay no tax on the maintenance income that we're forced to provide them with because we're paying tax at a much higher rate, actually, because we're forced to earn more money. So we're paying a higher rate of tax. They receive that payment. There's no tax to them. And it's very likely that they're either not working or they're not working many hours. And therefore their low tax bands aren't being utilised. And that simple fact gives us the motive for government. This is ultimately their motive in perpetuating this system, is that it generates an awful lot of money, extra money, for the UK Treasury by persecuting one parent and enslaving them. You know, the fact that, you know, they're forcing one parent to take on employment that goes up the tax bandings is hugely lucrative for the government. And that's before you start considering the other additional taxation that they generate by, you know, family breakdown, with the children having to be cared for over 2 homes, 2 lots of cars, 2 lots of general expenditure, 2 lots of bills, the properties being, you know, the property market being much more saturated as a result. You know, 2 homes being required pushes up rental prices, pushes up property prices, pushes up stamp duty, you name it. The financial benefit to the Treasury through this is pretty much incalculable. It's so high. But just looking at CMS alone, doing some very basic calculations, it's my view that the Treasury is benefiting about £5,000 a year from every one of the 435,000 paying parents. And that's an extra over £2 billion a year that they're raking in through this con. And we need to stop accepting it. We need to start doing something, because it's the motive for, you know, it provides the financial motive, the financial incentive, which becomes the driving force for parental alienation. You know, and parental alienation is child abuse. So really it is little wonder that the government have done so little. Actually, they've done nothing. Actually, they've gone to extraordinary lengths to prevent parental alienation, the child abuse and domestic abuse, that is parental alienation, being recognised in landmark legislation. They've done everything that they can to solidify this position. And we are standing for it because we're not doing anything. So that's really what I wanted to get across in this video. I hope it helps. If you would like a copy of this spreadsheet, just reach out to me. It might be good for you to, if you're in the same boat as me, to use it as a template and see what it means for you, what the reality is for you, and why you feel it's just impossible, and that you're, you know, understandably losing the will to continue and losing all sense of hope and purpose. It's perfectly understandable and perfectly reasonable, and it doesn't make you the wrong person, it makes them the wrong person. So I hope you got something from this, and thanks for listening.